when I met the Pope, that is exactly what he said when I met Pope Francis. You know, and I said, Pope Francis, I'm come from a LGBTQ community where I'm the mayor. And, you know, and he said, you know, until the church stops labeling and until we love unconditionally, we are doing it wrong.
Hi, gay. I'm PJ Brescia, they, them pronouns, your host of the BabyGay Podcast and the founder of the BabyGay community, celebrating the coming out process through storytelling, advocacy, and togetherness. I came out later in life and I knew nothing about queer culture. I'm still not an expert, so let's go on a journey of self-discovery together with amazing guests, diverse coming out stories, LGBTQI plus history, and everything in between. This is the BabyGay Podcast. Coming out looks good on you.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the BabyGay Podcast. I'm your host, PJ Brescia, they, them, and today we're here at the historic Black Cat in Silver Lake, California. And my guest is former West Hollywood mayor and current city council member, John Erickson. John is actually currently running for State Senate of California, so make sure you go vote, and please enjoy my episode with John. Thanks for joining us.
Oh, it's my pleasure.
This is an honor.
Oh, the honor is all mine.
Well, I've done a lot of research about you in the past day.
Oh, shit.
And you really have a very inspiring story.
Oh, well, that's nice.
You know, from like intern to mayor.
Yeah. You know,
Tell us.
I never thought I'd be an elected official, ever. I wanted to be a teacher for the longest time. I came out here for graduate school and I was getting both of my masters. And right before my PhD, my old professor said, there's an internship program at the city of West Hollywood in the city council offices. It's paid, which was, you know, important. You got to pay the bills. Yeah. And she's like, you should totally apply. And I was like, I don't really know if I'm going to move back to LA. I was living in New York at the time. And then magic always happens in the weirdest way in my life, I feel. And I applied and I said, well, I don't know if I'm going to come back. They said, okay, we'll go out to some other people. And then like within a week or two, my former partner and I were like, no, we're going to move back to Los Angeles. And then they called, the city of West Hollywood called back and we're like, we didn't like it in the employees that we were interviewing. Are you still interested? And I said, well, actually, I'm moving back. And so they're like, great. So I came in for the final interview and then they offered me the job and I started, in 2012 or 13. And it's been a wonderful, wild roller coaster ever since.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
It's very in line with my thinking, which is things just happen for a reason.
Yeah.
The timing, you could not plan those two things if you tried. Yeah. So the fact that happened has led you here. But let's roll it back.
Let's roll it back.
Let's go back to birth.
Let's
go back to birth.
Yes.
Tell us about your birth.
It's a dark and stormy night in Oshkosh, Wisconsin. Uh-huh. I'm from Ripon, Wisconsin, the birthplace of the Republican Party. They're all Democrats now. Don't worry. It's the Abe Lincoln Republican Party. And I had, I think if I've repressed all of the trauma enough, I thought I had a great childhood. So, I had great friends. My family was wonderful. I come from a typical, middle-class family in a small town. My dad, was a salesman and worked all over. My mom worked a typical 9-to-5 job where she worked with patients at medical clinics and helped them get checked in and get all the services that they needed. And I have two older twin sisters who were ultimately always perfect, because they were the firstborn. And then there was little old me, and always causing trouble, I think, from a very early age. And at the end of the day, when I grew up in Ripon, Wisconsin, I really started learning about public service kind of before I knew what public service was, because I was a little hellraiser, back then. And my sisters, who are about 5 years older than me, I'll never forget, they would always call my grandmother and they would be like, you got to come get John. We're going to kill him. And she would come, and she was very involved in the community. She would work at the food pantry. She would help run the candy stand at the baseball games. She was in the VFW. She was everywhere.
What's
and
the
anywhere.
VFW?
The Veterans of Foreign War, because she was, later did I find out, the first female president of the Wisconsin VFW. And she had this whole background and history of joining the war after Pearl Harbor and becoming a WAC, in the Women's Auxiliary Corps. And just this badass woman, feminist, that would ultimately shape my life to be what it is probably today.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
Was she with your grandfather?
She was with my grandfather, who died. I never knew him. I'm named after him, John. And he died. My grandfather, John, died at a very early age, my mom's dad. And so she was really forced to raise 3 boys and a girl, my mom and her uncles, my uncles. And in a time, 60s and 70s, where women were still coming of in the feminist movement and into power. And she really made her life her own, and really made Ripon, Wisconsin, her little kingdom of public service. Wow. And everything that was supposed to be good in the world.
Yeah.
And she raised the community, is what she said. I mean, my uncles were very popular, and everybody always remembers and has a story of walking into my grandmother's house and just hanging out with her, or my uncles, or my mom. And just, she was a staple of my hometown.
I mean, one, that's incredible. She sounds like an icon.
Yeah.
And I just feel like, and this is something that I want to just continue to harness with this podcast, but visibility is so important to kind of show younger people what is possible. Like, she was clearly a trailblazer, and it probably unlocked something within you that she can do it, I can do it too.
Yeah. And I think, at the end of the day, my grandmother, I never had the ability to come out to. She died at a time when I was not really ready to come out to her. I had come out to certain family members at that time. And then when I moved out here for graduate school, she died a year later. And so I never really had that opportunity, but I always felt like she knew, because I was like her little precocious, special grandson in many ways. And I was her favorite, no matter what anyone says. No, I was, and everyone will say that in the family. I think even some of her sons would be like, yeah, she loved John a lot. But she really, I think, said that it doesn't matter if you're not supposed to be the majority here. It doesn't matter if you're the leader. Like, you step in, you claim your space, and you fight like hell for what's worth it. And no matter what, keep dancing.
That's right.
Yeah.
I want to dive deeper into the coming out. So let's go back. So how old were you when you first realized that something was maybe more special about you than the other kids?
Oh, I'm not gay.
Oh, you're not?
No,
okay.
Joke. Is this a gay podcast?
No, it's not.
Oh boy, I gotta go. No. I think I always knew. I knew from a very early age. I think middle school. Like, I just felt different around boys. I had a lot of friends that were girls. Felt more comfortable around them. I was like in this awkward phase too, because I was very tall. I feel like going into the 6th grade, I was already like 6'1".
Oh my God.
And I liked playing sports and, doing all the things that boys, in quotes, like to do. But I also loved being like, the damsel in distress, and obviously a little bit dramatic when we need it to be, because let's face it, gays love the drama.
Yep.
And it was always like this secret I had that I didn't really understand how to do anything with. And I'm sure it helped me or forced me to lash out in different ways. For example, I loved order and structure. So I always really excelled at school, because I would go there, you want to get good grades, you want to be the top of your class, you want to do all these great things and fit in. And at home, pure hell. I would, and I think it's because I felt like unsure about who I could be in that space, because my friends supported me at school and they knew in some way before me telling them, but my family didn't. My sisters still to this day are like, Mom, come on. Like, you didn't know. And so we'll figure that out later when my mom and I go to therapy in some way. But
highly recommend.
But, being gay in a small town too, especially coming of age of like pop culture, and you're seeing shows on television on like what that means. I started really learning like survival skills for myself. And because I was a meticulous planner, like, okay, like, get good grades, get into school, get a scholarship, get a job so you can pay your own bills. So that way, if you do come out, you're not one of these horror stories of people who have been ostracized from their family for being who they are. And I think at an early age was this kind of like a fuck it mentality. Like, if you don't love me and accept me for who I am, then I don't really need you in my life.
Most people, that's hard to attain in general in life. So.
And I credit my grandmother to that, because she was always like, no, you are a strong person. You are beautiful no matter who you are. Like, and I think for me, she showed what love first can do. And I think if only everyone had something in their youth or now more than ever. It says you are beautiful, like you are loved from an early age. This whole trauma of coming out that so many of us have to deal with, even today in 2026, would be minimized.
Was your grandmother Catholic?
My grandmother, this is a great story. My grandmother was many religions, and mostly whatever had the best brunch on a Sunday. And so she was known for being Presbyterian. She was known for being Anglican, Catholic at times, Lutheran. I don't know if she ever went to the Jehovah's Witnesses breakfast ceremony. I don't think they had that. That's, being a little snide. But you could often find her car parked outside whatever church with her friends, had a good Sunday brunch.
That's hilarious.
Yeah.
Well, I asked that because my Italian grandmother, Catholic Italian grandmother, when I was a young age, exuding my queerness, she told me that I should go be a priest. Oh. So did you ever get that? Never got that note?
No. I grew up Catholic. Yeah. I'm still Catholic to this day. Practicing even, I love, my church in West Hollywood and all of the things that occur there and in my life. And, I really rebelled from a religion, I think, at a young age. And my grandmother was very much the same. It took, my mother would drop me off for Sunday school at like 9 a.m. or something like that on Sundays. And I would wait for her to drive away and I would run away.
Oh.
And I would run to my grandmother's house and she'd be like, what are you doing here? And I'd be like, oh, just hanging out. And she goes, okay. Cause I would normally like ride my bike down there or do something. And she would be like, oh, John's here. We're going to hang out and talk. And I think my grandmother ultimately understood I was running away from Sunday school, especially after the attendance reports came out. But she would talk to me about what religion really was in her own ways, I think, in those private conversations. And it was always about love and community and never about a specific deity or, a figurehead in that way that was leading the church. And then she would take me back. She would drop me off because she would know my mom would be coming and we'd have to go to like 10 a.m. Mass, 11 a.m. Mass at St. Patrick's Church. And no one really knew. And I did that for quite some time. And she really helped, I think, avoid the religious trauma that probably could have come. And that's like when I would go to church and they would, say horrific lines or quote, things from the Bible that, are frankly, historically and accurately not true. If you actually know the research, which I do. And I would say, well, screw that. Like, I'm not going to hell. Like, if my God is about love, then this isn't really what is supposed to be said. And that's why when I got my PhD in religion and I was talking to a lot of people about their trauma, they did not have that support system that taught them that. And I was always really fascinated by, well, why not me? Like, why did I not as a fifth grader, a sixth grader, think like, oh my God, I'm going straight to hell for being gay? Like, what made me so special? And it was always her.
So did you ever have this kind of conflicting sentiment between your queerness and your connection to Catholicism?
No, because I think if you're preaching of a God of love and forgiveness, anything that gets in the middle of that is just truly, I think, missing the point. And that is still true to this day. People use religion to ostracize people. People use religion to make you feel less than. And God is ultimately a God of love. And, when I met the Pope, that is exactly what he said when I met Pope Francis. And I said, Pope Francis, I'm come from a LGBTQ community where I'm the mayor. And, and he said, until the church stops labeling and until we love unconditionally, we are doing it wrong.
That is so incredible.
Yeah.
Okay, I need to hear more about the Pope.
So Pope Francis is one of the most amazing people who has ever graced this earth. I just got to let you know, the stuff he did for trans rights, the stuff he did for the LGBTQ community, women in the church, completely kicking out, frankly, corrupt cardinals and saying, go back to where you're supposed to be preaching, because he really led a Jesuit life and a life of service, which is something just not many people do that are leading large religious denominations in today's world. So I had the opportunity through some friends to go and meet Pope Francis back in 2023. And it was because we had signed on to, the city of West Hollywood had signed on to a nonprofit that he was head of that essentially talked about sports and school and community and really getting people involved in those things because he was a big soccer fan. And so because we had signed on the county of Los Angeles, parts of the city of Los Angeles, it came about really fast. And he said, I want to invite these people who helped make this happen. And I was able to go represent the city in the Vatican and Vatican City. And it was a real quick 72 hours there and back. But ultimately, we got to sit there, have a private audience with him in the place where he lived. He did not live in the Vatican in the palace. He lived in a small little room in a hotel that he had built, that was built for the priests that come in and out that are visiting. And he was rolled in. There was about a group of 12, 15 of us, all people who I still talk to and adore to this day. And I mean, he was no farther away from me than you are right now. And he gave such a beautiful blessing and a message, but then he opened it up to questions. And I right away said, Pope Francis, Holy Father, I represent a large LGBTQ community. What can you share with me about people who are struggling with their faith and their sexuality? And Pope Francis has this way when he looked at you. I mean, he has these beautiful blue eyes and he looked at you. And it was like and I know many of us might not have experienced this yet, or maybe we have, when someone pierces your soul. And he looked at you and looked at me and he said, in Spanish, because he prefers to speak in Spanish. He preferred to speak in Spanish because he has a very thick accent. And he would go, nunca, 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 right? And he said, essentially, until the Catholic Church loves unconditionally, we will never get this right. We will never fully accept ourselves. And it was like this moment that we're all of us around the table. We're like, oh my God, did the Pope, did the head of the Catholic Church, the vicar of Christ, just literally come out and affirm LGBTQ rights? And that's why it was one of those moments where I'll remember that till the day I die. And it's really special to be affirmed by someone like that, and also maybe know you were a little right when you were younger, be like, yeah, okay, yeah, cool, same girl, But it was special for us because I think all of us finally understood that we had a figurehead in religion that was saying no, and that was tantamount to everything he was doing before. I mean, he, during COVID, let trans sex workers sleep in the Vatican Square, and he would feed them, even wash their own feet. I mean, the day after we left and we were on the plane, he invited trans sex workers into the Vatican for food and to have a meal with them and to talk with them. I mean, the stuff that he did is truly still going to be talked about for decades. Yeah. And then the second time when we met, we were there because our friend was also premiering a film about the war in Ukraine, and Pope Francis was a big proponent of peace. And he spoke very openly about, the need for peace in Ukraine. And we were there watching a friend of mine, and I believe yours, a film that that is very powerful. And we were sitting there a little suffering from jet lag, and we're watching. I'm sitting next to my very good friend, supervisor, Lindsay Horvath, and she looks back and they have rolled Pope Francis in to literally be behind us up the stairs. And she goes she elbows me. She goes, pay attention. And then no one knew he was there. And then the lights come on and he's there. He gives a small little blessing. And then we all got to go back into another private room with people that were in the film, the filmmaker and us again. And we got to see him again. And I remember when I got to go up to him again and shake his hand, he pointed at me. He goes, oh, you know, and it was a really special time. And I got to shake his hand again. And I got to thank him for the day before of what he said to me and how much it meant to me. And he just gave me a blessing and, smiled. And it's those memories and those things that I think that queer kid from Ripon, Wisconsin never could have imagined. Yeah. And when I went home that night and was thinking about where we were, I found myself walking around Vatican City alone at night and just really having a moment to be like, I'm here. I'm literally standing outside St. Peter's Basilica, and holy shit.
That's a lot to process.
Yeah. We're still processing.
Yeah, truly. I mean, that's a forever thing to process.
Yeah.
Would you say, I mean, what would be the most surprising thing that you learned from that experience? Is that just his take on everything, or?
I think the most surprising thing I learned from that experience is that you can feel the divine and not really understand anything else but that. And that's a question of faith. That's a question of spirituality. And I think you don't need to you don't need to do anything else but understand and accept that feeling. Mm-hmm. And it's really powerful for many of us who have felt alone or feel alone still to this day, and that don't question that feeling. Mm-hmm. Like, don't question the wrongness of maybe feeling different, accept and embrace the power of that beauty, because it was something that was so powerful that it has the ability to change you. And a person you're going to meet twice in your life that you can then go see, and having that connection to the larger spiritual world, and also knowing like you're okay. Mm-hmm. And that it's going to be okay.
Mm-hmm. That is so beautiful. And thank you for sharing. And it's just, I mean, in such a time that's so scary for all of us, that just having that faith that everything is going to be okay is so important right now. Yeah. And just take things one day at a time. I would love to go more in depth with the coming out experience specifically. How old were you when you came out?
I was a sophomore in college.
Okay.
I had started dating my first boyfriend at that time, and my mom and I were talking on the phone. I had come out to my sisters already.
At what age?
God, I think it was 21.
Okay.
I'm pretty sure I was 21. I had come out to some of my friends earlier, before college. They all knew. And
yeah, who was the first person you came out to?
The first person I came out to was my friend Abriel, my best friend Abriel. And she's like, duh. Like, you know, and then my other friends really slowly afterwards. And when I came out to my sister Melinda, she was my first family member I came out to. It was really because she was coaxing me into it, like really like saying and trying to bring me along. She was studying. She's a school guidance counselor. She's incredible. And she had like shown me a presentation she had made for her class about why she was open and affirming and why LGBTQ students are amazing and all these things. And I think there was a poster board involved. I can't remember, and then I remember saying, well, you know, I have a date with a boy later or something like that. And she was like, I know. And it was like that love and acceptance of her that was truly magnificent, you know. And my sisters and I didn't really start becoming really good friends until I kind of moved out to California, because I was always their terrorizing little brother in many ways. And then Allison, my other sister, I sent an email to. She'll never forgive me to this day.
Why did you?
I don't know. I mean, who knows why? I mean, she's the very logical one, and she's very like, no, like these are things. And I remember, you know, Melinda probably told her right away, because they always know each other's thoughts. Mm-hmm. But, you know, they were very accepting and they were supportive from day one, and probably even before when I knew. Mm-hmm. And then when I came out to my parents, you know, my mom on a phone call, and she was like pestering me about, oh, you know, when are you going to bring a girl home or something like that? And I finally just had enough. And I was like, you know what, Mom, I am going to bring someone home. And his name is Dan. And she was like, what? You know, she had her moment. And my dad, stoic as ever, you know, gets on the phone and he goes, well, John, you know, thank you for telling us. And, you know, I understand, you know, we'll just, you know, think about some things. And he's like, and I'll never forget this, but you're just so good at sports.
Oh my God.
So
that's literally, my dad would say the same thing.
Yeah. And I'm like, well, yeah. And the dam had finally broke. And, you know, my sister Allison was actually home at the time. She was doing stuff. And I remember her calling me and saying, you couldn't have given me a warning. And I said, no, but like all things me, I seized the moment and I took that opportunity. And, you know, my parents were going through a divorce at that time. And so I credit my mom's reaction to being really emotionally upset, because her life was changing. You know, she was, my dad and her, who had been married for 35 years at that time, were getting a divorce. And, you know, I think that really had a big impact on a lot of her reactions. And later on, couple months later, you know, she was just fine, and she's the biggest gay ally to this day. And my dad is, you know, a great guy as well, and my whole family understood it. And then, you know, it was really when my grandmother died that my uncles found out, and I had told them, and they were like, John, we don't care if you're gay. Mm-hmm. And it was like this moment of like, oh, wow, like this wasn't as big of a deal in my head as I was making it. And my sisters were such allies, because I remember when my family, my mom and my dad were having, you know, issues or just going through it themselves because they were really fearful for my health. And, they grew up in the AIDS crisis and they just didn't want me to get hurt or sick, and be safe and be protected, which is a beautiful place to come from when you're approaching this type of question that they were dealing with. My sisters were like, well, if you can't accept our brother for who he is, then like, you think you're ever seeing your grandchildren in that way? And I think that made my parents click and like, oh, like, come on, let's get rid of this. So.
What were some pieces of media, books, film, movies, pop stars, whoever, that were kind of helpful in your journey?
Well, always Buffy the Vampire Slayer.
Thank you.
I mean, bring the reboot back, Hulu. Bring it back. Show us. I mean, anyway, so I look right to camera on that one. There was always Queer as Folk. I mean, that was really, I grew up in a time of a lot of queer media starting to be very subtle, or there was a gay character on the television. I remember watching Dawson's Creek and when Jack came out, of course, or Queer as Folk, and my dad coming down one night before I'd come down, he's like, what are you watching? Like, we get Showtime? Like, what is this? Right? And so I'd be like, oh, it's a family show. And he's like, this is no family show. And so there was that, but Out and magazines, and I was very well read as a child, and so I had gone to the library and checked out queer books and authors that I mean, reading Proust at a very young age is not something normally typically done, but when you hang out at libraries and there's only so many things for you to do or read, you start reading a lot of classic French literature or Russian literature, right? It's just obvious, right? And understanding different themes, that were taken about. But those are some of the biggest media pieces of my life. I mean, Jennifer Garner. I mean, all of these gay icons in that way
Powerful women.
I mean, we all remember the Cruel Intentions scene where you just see Ryan's butt, right? And you're like, well, and my grandmother actually is the reason I got into that movie. It was rated, wasn't it rated R?
Yes.
Yeah. And I was like, oh, Grandma, I want to go see this movie. And she was like, oh, okay, cool. Well, I don't really want to go see it. I was like, phew, thank God. She goes, well, it's like, I need someone to let me in. She goes, oh, okay. And so we would do what we normally do. She would come pick me up. She'd drop me off. She would go do whatever she was doing in Oshkosh that night because that's where the movie theater was. And then she picked me up and we went to like some buffet because she loved a buffet. And we would then go home and hang out.
So she snuck you in.
Oh, yeah. She was like, oh, this is my son. He can go in and see the movie.
Iconic.
Yeah. She was getting me into queer media before even she knew about it.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah, Cruel Intentions was a very formative piece of culture. That
I think for many of
me.
us.
For many of us. So, okay. So then also, I do want to hear more your PhD is so impressive. What was something that you learned unexpectedly from that experience?
Let me talk about my journey to get to my PhD. Okay. I always rebelled against therapy, right? For many reasons. I was a very anxious child at times. I lashed out in different ways. My mom didn't really know what to do with me. And because my mom worked in the medical field, she was like, well, let's, get him in therapy. I obviously had ADHD and was undiagnosed at that time. And so I went to this therapist. I'll never forget going to this therapist who was like awful. And that's why I like therapy, conversion therapy. These things are dangerous to children. They are toxic to someone's productive growth and development. And if you don't have the right people around you, it can really fuck you up. And I'm sorry, is this a G-rated podcast?
No, you can.
I'm sorry. Good. Yeah. If this is a G-rated podcast, it'd be very different. Yeah. But and I'll never forget going to this horrible guy who was just like made me feel less than. And I was like, I hate this. I don't want to be here anymore.
How old were you?
Oh, I think I was like 10 to 12. I was really young. And, they tested me, and I came back that I had ADHD. And then my dad, I remember throwing a big fit about him not wanting me to go to this guy anymore. And I have that memory in my head. And then moving forward, I would go to other therapists, some that I liked, some that I didn't. I was like, I just don't want to do this anymore. And, I stopped going. And it was because later on, I found out that this therapist that I went to originally had written a letter saying that I would never graduate high school. I would never amount to anything. I would have all these weird disorders that come with someone who has never been trained on LGBTQ issues and therapy and what that means and how the world impacts us. And I'll never forget when I graduated with my dual master's degrees, my dad gave me that letter and said, never forget your potential. And so like going to therapy now and understanding why it's important and how it's helpful for growth or just a better understanding, it's a much more powerful experience because I was never allegedly supposed to get a PhD. I was never supposed to be good at school. I was never supposed to be smart. And that's where you have to remember that the limitations set on you by society do not dictate your future. And it is you who have the full true power to take control out of your life. I never thought I'd leave Wisconsin. I never thought I'd go to graduate school. Hell, I never thought I'd move to California. I mean, because growing up, you see all this media and all this great stuff happening out here, and then you're like in it. I mean, still to this day, when I'm at an event in West Hollywood or I'm at, the Elton John Oscars party or something like that, you're like, where the am I? Like, really? Like, this is where this little queer kid from Wisconsin is? And academia and education was always the thing that brought me out of that darkness. And wanted to then be an educator myself to help other kids understand that role, that power it had. And then getting into my PhD program, which is in American religious history and then American public policy, where I then studied the disconnect between spirituality and sexuality from post-Stonewall to the marriage equality movement. And I interviewed 30 people on what that meant in their lives and essentially came to the conclusion that if it had not been for LGBTQ people essentially being kicked out of their religious spaces, we would not have the modern LGBTQ movement that we have today. And that whereas religion and sexuality have often been seen as really combative, that actually if you go underneath the surface and look, they're much more aligned for powerful community building as a result. And amazing churches and religious denominations started. I mean, you look at Troy Perry and the Metropolitan Lutheran Church that's out here, and you look at other open and affirming churches that happen even in the Catholic Church, or you name it, right? Or you have powerful nonprofits that started as a result of people being kicked out of their churches because they couldn't get some type of community from that. I mean, Project Angel Food is a perfect example of that. You had Marianne Williams, coming out and being a real religious figure that actually touched people during the HIV/AIDS crisis. Something that I found out while I was interviewing people and being that person, which is why she's so revered in the LGBTQ community, because she not only helped feed them, keep them alive, but she said, your love is worthy of God. And other people, God is greater than AIDS. I mean, people that I had the opportunity to interview really helped me understand, like, wow, I really wasn't too far off when I was growing up, but it really helped me understand the why not me scenario, right? Like when I found out, the same types of teachings, why didn't I think I was going to hell? A lot of people did, and they felt horrific about it, but then they fought back and created their own religious faiths or their own spirituality or their own communities, or they left religion altogether and they really have a lot of friction with it still. And that is extremely valid, because no one should tell you your trauma is not valid and how you deal with it in that way. And so that was my PhD, and I'm really glad I was able to do all of that. And yeah,
very impressive.
Thank you.
Something that I want to touch on with this podcast and BabyGay in general is kind of diving into the history of our community and our culture, because I, coming out later, didn't learn anything about it in my incredible schooling that I had growing up. And it wasn't even until I was out for a few, maybe even 3 to 5 years, let's say, that I still didn't know anything about it until I took the onus on myself and started researching. And the Eric Marcus podcast, Making Gay History, was so incredible and so informative, and just really giving perspective and storytelling of those people that came before us that were these trailblazers. And I just think it's so important that we share queer history, because
right here, I mean, everyone thinks Stonewall, right? No one remembers the Compton cafeteria riots up in San Fran. No one remembers the Black Cat riots, which happened way before then. I mean, there are so many other instances of queer resistance, or gay resistance as it was known at that time, that history needs to be further taught. We're learning about it now thanks to the digital age, thanks to podcasts like this one and many others that have really undone a lot of the mainstream history that was important to get into the textbooks when it was, but really understanding the crux of our history, that we've been here the whole time and we're not going anywhere. And that when we really look at LGBTQ identity and history, it is all over the United States, the world, with how our policies were made. I mean, and there was a free love movement portion, post Stonewall, in the 60s. And then this rise of the conservative right during, Nixon and Reagan that really pushed back. And we saw, individual religious leaders who said that gays deserved AIDS. That was the impetus for them putting on a lot of harmful public policies that are still on the books to this day. Even here in California, there is a new law being repealed almost every legislative session because it's still there. When you look at how gay men are being harmed by the health insurance industry or anyone because of, the guardrails that were put up, blood donations is still a big thing. You have to be like celibate for 3 months,
insane.
still unable to give blood, but people are still giving blood and just not, and then checking the box, right? Yeah. Something that I worked on with then Congressmember Schiff, now Senator Schiff in West Hollywood, because we've always been pushing that narrative and that policy change to get done, right? And so those blood drives, those things are really important, but we still are literally fixing the smallest policy issue to the largest. Mm-hmm. And we're still always in this constant, will we have rights tomorrow? Will we not have rights tomorrow? I mean, transgender people in Kansas can't get a driver's license, and they can't go to another state and get a driver's license without, having to deal with everything back in their home state. And it's all this sick history repeating itself, and a dangerous history repeating itself. Mm-hmm. And gay people, whether you're in a powerful position or you have privilege or you're white or you're cisgendered, need to remember everyone in our beautiful spectrum and our rainbow that says the people who are just like us are being hurt across this world. And it's not just about money. It's not just about politics, it's about survival right now.
Mm-hmm. What do you think that we could take from that past era that was so dangerous that's pretty much happening exactly right now? Like, what lessons could we learn from then?
Fight like hell.
Yeah.
I mean, ultimately, no one is going to take away your rights if you're on the streets protesting and fighting. And we are living in a state where surveillance is quite large, and, queer people, LGBTQ people rely on social media and other forms of digital technology to actually communicate, because it's unsafe for us to go out in public in certain spaces. But that's being surveilled. And so how are we making sure we're safe in both an online forum as well as an in-person forum? Are levels of trauma that we're going to have to unpack when we win. And ultimately, going back to the history of being creative, gay people and resistance are very acquainted with each other. Yeah. And, it's not just putting together a picket sign. It's also organizing in your community. It's running for office. It's making sure people don't continue to elect bigots across the country. And it goes all the way down from your local school board up to that monster in the White House right now who's just a fascist, and fighting back at all levels, because your voice does matter. The smallest voice can make a difference. And I know it seems really privileged to say that to somebody in Idaho or Illinois or Florida who is living in their bedroom and really scared to come out or tell their family or just go out and be who they are. But your voice matters, and it's important for things like this for them to hear, no, you fucking matter and you can make a difference in this world. I was just like you. I was a kid from a town that had 7,000 people, and here we are.
That's right. And everyone needs to share their story, because it's so helpful for those that are still struggling. And that's really the crux of this whole podcast. Yeah. Which leads me to, I want to talk about some of the things in West Hollywood that you've worked on. Yeah. And, you've done so many incredible things. What makes you the most proud on what you've done in West Hollywood?
I look at West Hollywood and I think about some of the reasons why I ran for office. I really ran after we did not do the Fight for 15 campaign. I was really embarrassed. I was working for the city at that time, and the city of West Hollywood didn't agree to do the minimum wage, the $15 an hour.
Can you explain?
So the Fight for 15 campaign came about back in 2015, 2016 for everyone to earn a living wage. Shocker, something that we're talking about to this day, because, by the way, it's really expensive to live because we live in a capitalistic society that values the dollar more than people and worth. And what they're offering, something that we need to, topple. Amen. But I will never forget being in the back of that council meeting and seeing both my current colleague, John Heilman, who's on the council, and then Councilmember Lindsay Horvath lose the vote 3-2 because they put business interests ahead of people. And by the way, people are why businesses work. And I went home that night, and my former partner at the time had essentially said to me, do people know what it's like to make like 30 cents more an hour? And I'm like, no. And if I ever get into a position to change it, I swear to God I will. And the first thing I did when I ran for office in West Hollywood, when I won in 2020, was start a living wage campaign and a minimum wage increase campaign. And it was the height of COVID. I mean, look, it was not the right time to do it, but we had to do it because everyone was struggling, and we're still struggling to this day. But we won a hard fight to not only then have the highest minimum wage in the country, now just California, will come back eventually, but it also included things that were stuff we were talking about back then. Historic sick time and vacation time for all hourly workers. And when you actually pull back, the covers and understand that like businesses, yes, are struggling because it was COVID and they're still struggling to this day. Labor costs are not the same as insurance, commercial rents, and the cost of goods, which are all in flux because of the current state of national as well as statewide affairs. You cannot tell me, and I choose to never believe, that the people that you employ are the reason why you can no longer afford your business. Because at the end of the day, if you don't have your workers, you don't have your business.
Correct.
And so I'm really proud of that. And that is something that I've had to defend in multiple elections. I'm a big old monster for wanting to pay people more and pay people a living wage. And by the way, $20.72 or whatever it is right now in West Hollywood is nowhere near a living wage. A living wage in the state of California or in Los Angeles is like $35 an hour. So let's really talk about pay equity and pay inequality, because that is assuming you are a white person making that amount of money and that your supervisor is actually paying you those things, right? And the levels of wage theft discrimination cases are rampant. And we have to make sure that we're enforcing these laws and helping people get out. And at the end of the day, I'll never forget in the LA Times when I was not up for re-election, they were running all these articles about how disastrous the minimum wage was, because we had, a Chamber of Commerce and other people that were really trying to paint this narrative that maybe to an electorate that is 76% renters and a majority service-based industry individuals isn't going to go too far. They learned that in multiple elections, I think, that really understood when they asked, what did the increase of the minimum wage do for you? And the person said, I can finally buy an air conditioner for my apartment in the San Fernando Valley. That's it. Mm-hmm. And their quality of life gets better. And that's where we need to think, because it is a cycle. And I am so proud of that law. And, it's codified into our municipal code now, and the voters even passed and signed up for a ballot initiative that essentially we adopted without having to go to the ballot. It says the only people that can ever overturn the minimum wage now are the people of West Hollywood. And let me tell you, it's not popular to go to people and say, you know what, you should make a little bit less.
Right.
Yeah.
You're running for state senate.
Yes.
So what are some things that you have learned and accomplished from your time in West Hollywood that you want to bring to the state level?
All politics are local. I mean, these issues that the state are dealing with right now are all local issues that we hear about every day. It's healthcare, it's housing, it's education, it's public safety. These are all really critical issues that the state has the ability to jump in and overcome. I mean, the state right now, I believe, is setting their budgets on the backs of working people and working families. And that is something that is a priorities question. And I think it's a moral question. Are we going to be a Democratic Party that uplifts the middle class and working people? Or are we going to bow down to corporate and special interests that want to essentially say, you know what, like $20 an hour, let's stop there. No, we need to have a larger conversation about the cost of housing up at the state. When we can't even pass rent cap laws in a state where we need to do all that we can to make sure people are housed and that they can stay housed, what are we doing? Those laws fail because of the interests of the landlord lobby. When we look at minimum wage standards, and that hasn't been touched for quite some time because corporate interests want to come in and say, you shouldn't be paying people more than enough. Trust us. Let's have another study. No, we cannot claim to be a super majority Democratic Party in the state legislature if we don't start acting like it. And that's where we come back to things like education. Teachers still to this day are having to buy their own supplies because their school districts are so severely underfunded. We're about to see another, by the time when this airs, potentially another LAUSD strike. By the way, I stand with all teachers in striking because they're not asking to make millions of dollars. They're saying, can you give us health care and make sure that we don't have to go home and and go to a food shelter or go to things and have to rely on the same social services that we are trying to provide to people. These are the issues that I think I know people care a lot about in this district. And also when you look at housing, we're not building enough housing to keep people anywhere near the levels of rent that they need to do without a rent cap that we're seeing. And so for not building housing, and we're succumbing to NIMBYism and other forms of, just confusion around how we're actually going to be Democrats in the state legislature, our priorities are all out of whack.
Do you have an example that you specifically feel the most proud or just want to share where you were, because of your fight and because of your just no nonsense, no bullshit, we're getting this done experience, like pushed XYZ initiative forward?
Oh, there's a lot. I mean, West Hollywood and other regional fights that we've always come with a little bit of flair and drama. We could look at street improvements, we can look at bike lanes, we can look at housing production and development. I mean, nothing comes to mind except for, the ongoing fight that we have to make our streets safer. And I look at street safety improvements across my city and across the region, and they're so underfunded, underwhelming, and nothing's being done. And the city of West Hollywood has not updated our streets since our inception. Yeah, we've resurfaced things, we've filled potholes, we've done that, but we actually haven't looked at the multimodal transportation network that needs to be built to get people out of their cars, to stop, adding to climate change, but ultimately to make people feel safer and more secure if they choose to walk, bike, scoot, or even, be in a car, because those things make it safer for drivers at the end of the day. I'll never forget when I was running for re-election in 2024 and seeing my name plastered everywhere to, stop me from, putting bike lanes on Fountain Avenue, or stop me from wanting to make sure people are safer. And I won that fight. We won that fight by not only being reelected by historic margins, but we won that fight because we touched a narrative of people that were saying, like, yeah, these streets are not safe. Mm-hmm. I mean, you and I were talking last night, and this morning about our mutual friend was just hit by a car last night.
Insane.
In a green painted bike lane that was unprotected. And that's the type of accident that can be prevented by smart infrastructure planning. And that's really where local politics comes down to: streets, trees, and sidewalks. You want to have someone step out of their home onto a sidewalk that's paved, not fall. You want to have a beautiful park and landscape and a tree canopy. And you want to have streets that are safe for everyone. And that's ultimately, when you go up to the state, a larger issue of like making sure your public schools are funded, make sure healthcare is funded. Healthcare is a human right. I'm the only one in my race that supports CalCare and understanding single payer healthcare is the way we should go, and get insurers out of our pockets to make sure that we're actually getting healthcare at the end of the day. But ultimately, these fights are all local because they impact each other's lives, and we need elected officials that have lived these experiences. I always say that elected officials, if you really, I think, are going to be successful, have to do three things. You have to, and I think you should have to, work on what the minimum wage is in the city or the county you're at and see if you can get by. You should have to live without a car and rely on public transportation to get to and from work, to and from your social life, and if that's possible. And then 3, live without health insurance. And if you can come back to me and say, oh, things are great, all those things were good, then okay, the world's perfect. And spoiler alert, it's not, because people aren't making enough money. People are having to rely on cars rather than public transportation, especially now with the price of gas. And people's health care is going up because of disastrous federal bills, and as a result of them losing coverage itself. Those impacts of HR 1 that was passed last year, we have not felt yet. We are starting to feel across the country, but those disastrous and deadly impacts are going to come in a big wave, and it is going to be disastrous on our public health systems.
So everyone needs to stay diligent and informed and vote.
June 2nd.
Yeah, vote for the candidates that are going to protect these issues.
And that have a winning smile.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly. Obviously.
Obviously.
So we're a few quick things. So we're a little like woo here on the podcast. Just some future goals, personal, professional.
Survive.
Yeah, survive. Great. Yeah.
Make it to Friday. I mean, look, I'm running for statewide office. I'm an elected official. I try to go to the gym. I try to hang out with my dog, Winnie. You know, I try to see my friends and do everything I need to do to keep myself, you know, physically in shape and mentally in shape. And surviving the day can be just enough. Yes. I mean, truly. Yeah. I mean, I get home at night and I'm like, okay, it's time for bed.
I mean, your schedule is insane.
My schedule is pretty crazy.
It really is. Survive every single day.
Yeah. And I think a lot of people are always told, like, do more, do more, do more. And I'm like, no more.
I don't think you can.
You can't. And I think telling people it's okay to go to work and go home. Mm-hmm. It's okay to go to this event and not have to go to something else. It's okay to say no, something that is very hard to do because you always feel like you'll be left behind. Yeah. But it is okay just to get through the day.
Yeah. Agreed. Something I'm learning. No is so important. Our bandwidth is limited, so we can't do everything.
Yeah.
And now we're going to do a little rapid fire questions.
Great.
Where was your first public speaking moment?
It was probably in college at the University of Wisconsin, Oshkosh. I remember I was the student director for the it was a horrible acronym. It was called WAC. It was the Women's Advocacy Council, something like that, in Oshkosh, Wisconsin. And I was working at, it was a horrible council. It was a horrible acronym. I mean, horrible.
Yeah. WAC.
I mean, it was called WAC. I'm pretty sure I still have the t-shirt somewhere, which is another issue about hoarding.
Hilarious.
But my first public speaking role, we were doing Take Back the Night. And I had worked with the LGBTQ Center and the Women's Center at Oshkosh, the University of Wisconsin, Oshkosh, and we were taking our former chancellor around the campus. And the Women's Center was on the edge of campus, and it was in a dark alley. Terrifying. And I will never forget, I told the organizers, well, I'm going to like jump out of the bushes in front of the chancellor and just scare the crap out of him, right? And so I had like peeled off, no one knew, and other people were taking it, and I hid in the bushes, and we took the chancellor down this dark alley that had no lighting because we had been advocating it forever. And they were talking to him like, see, people have to come down. And I just jumped out, and he got, I'll never forget the look on his face. Chancellor Wells, if I'm not mistaken. And we got a light a little bit later. We got a light installed pretty quickly.
I mean, that's a defective
I would say that's maybe not public speaking, but I did have to like lead him around in that way. But ultimately, you know, proving a point. And maybe that's a little bit more about me. It's like, I'm always there for the maybe flair of the dramatic.
For the flair, the drama, for the drama.
I made my point though.
Yeah, that's a good one. What is one word that people always use to describe you?
Fighter.
That's good. Yeah. What still makes you laugh no matter what?
Ultimately, my friends bring me so much joy. And it's a meme that someone sends me, or it's a text message, or it's sitting like I was last night reading the news and texting one of my friends like, did this really happen? And just finding myself overtaken by laughter. And it's those little moments that with my friends that I just enjoy and thrive in.
We need to laugh. It's true. Every single day if possible.
It's good for you too.
Yeah. What's your go-to way to recharge after a long week?
I do love being with my friends. Okay. I think being with my friends is something that I've taken for granted at times because they know I'm busy and they know I'm always doing something. And they're politicos too, so they'll come along. But, you know, friendship is just the most beautiful thing we can have in this world.
That's right. Coffee or tea?
Coffee.
Bike, walk, or drive?
Bike. I have to drive because it's Los Angeles and I hate driving. It's the worst, especially in this town. It's horrible, but I love biking.
Mm-hmm. Early mornings or late nights?
I prefer late nights. I've been getting up early because I have to and because we have to be in a lot of places, but I do most of my best work after midnight.
Really?
Yeah.
What is a song that always gets you on the dance floor?
Well, Robin. I mean, Dancing on My Own. I mean, anything by her, you know, I think anything by Kelly Clarkson, the old school Kelly Clarkson, the divas in that way. But it's Robin.
I'm so sad her show's ending.
I know. But, you know, we support her.
Yeah. Yes. Favorite queer icon?
You have, I mean, Sarah Michelle Gellar. You have Jennifer Gardner. I mean, I favorite queer icon, I mean, to all the Buffy stans, it's always Buffy. Yeah. It's always Sarah Michelle Gellar for me.
Agreed. A queer leader or organizer that inspires you right now?
Chelsea Byers.
Same.
Big same. My forever mayor.
Big same. Favorite vacation destination?
I love going home to Wisconsin. I know it seems like such a line, but there's nothing like going home, seeing the things you remember, and like it's not warm by any means.
Vacation doesn't mean warm necessarily.
I mean, I love going home, and I don't get to go home enough.
That's really special.
Yeah.
And then what would you tell your baby gay self?
You'll be surprised by the things you'll accomplish.
That's incredible. Okay, so quickly, we'll do our last segment. It's called My First Time.
Oh, God.
So it's where you share your first queer crush, queer kiss, queer sexual experience, queer whatever, just to kind of demystify the anxiety that a lot of us have before we have that. I mean, if you want, we could talk about sex.
Let's do it, yeah.
Just one of those things that comes to mind.
My first time?
Sure, yeah.
I think the thing that I'm always remembered is when I was going to college. You know, I was a transfer student. I went to the University of Wisconsin-Whitewater for 2 years. My sisters went there, and I'll never forget going with the LGBTQ group to Madison, Wisconsin, and going to, I think it was called Club 5, and going out dancing and really going to my first gay club and understanding and seeing guys kissing or guys dancing and knowing like it was okay. And what that meant to just let the dance floor take over you and get away from the shame of it all and really living that beautiful life of dancing to the divas and all the great music, but then also dancing with a boy. And I have no idea who the first boy I danced with is, but I'm sure it was great.
Yeah. I mean, it is true. It's like the dance floor is healing. You let out everything. You bring in the joy. It's truly just so something I think we really need right now is just to dance.
Well, we cast a spell. I think when gay people or all people are on a dance floor, you're doing a motion together that puts forth a little bit more magic in the world that brings joy. I mean, you cannot not spin underneath a mirror ball and not feel like you're doing some type of an enchantment.
That's true. That's true. Well, John, this was really special. Thank you so much for joining us. Where can people find you on social media?
You can find me on Instagram and Twitter and Facebook at John Erickson WH, as well as, you know, my website if you want to learn more about my Senate run, JohnEricksonForSenate.com, or probably just out and about in the community. You know, I'm 6'4", so it's hard not to see me sometimes coming down the street.
That's right. And people should donate to your campaign.
And people should donate. Please donate. I'm running a grassroots campaign. You know, everyone in my race has donated personal wealth to themselves. And so when you're running against billionaires and people funded by the health insurance industry and the hospital association, you got to raise a lot of money to fight back.
Mm-hmm. And what date should people be making sure they go to the ballots?
Well, ballots will drop in May, the first week of May. And then on June 2nd, make sure your ballots are in. And that's when we'll go to the polls and we'll see how that turns out.
That's right. Well, very excited for you. You're going to win.
Oh, thank you.
And
fingers crossed.
Yes. We're manifesting.
We're manifesting.
And remember, baby gays,
coming out looks good on you.